Hi, my name is Jazmine Coates, and we're here with Elijah from...
I'm from the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, Local 2858. We're with the department, which covers the Department of Human Services.
Today, we're going to be talking about Department of Human Services today, and why is the Department of Human Services so slow?
Well, the Department of Human Services services the public, and as a union representative and union elected official, I represent the staff there for the north side of Chicago. And the issue that there have been longer waits has been a concern since 2013, whereby the administration between 2013 and all the way up until the most recent election, they've incorporated a new system which has caused long delays. In the news, some newscasts have happened over the past couple of years called IES. And the union has made concerns and communicated those concerns to the state regarding the impact that would have on the public and the clients. And so because of the glitches in this system, it has exacerbated the long waits that have happened across the offices. And in some instances, there have been violent interactions between the clients, and because of their frustration, and rightfully so, because on the worker side of it, the workers have been complaining about this system constantly for the last 6 years.
Okay, can they get a better system?
Yes, they can get it. They can repair it, or the company that made the IES system, I think the state can hold them accountable to either fix it, or if they can't fix it, purchase another one, I presume. But this system is based on a task-based platform, and the work staff and the caseworkers have all wanted to use the caseload system, and so it's been literally a transition from a caseload system to a task. And customers have expressed to me as through labor and community organizations their frustration about that.
Okay. Why is it that when people come in that they're so slow with typing, they're so slow with actually pulling up your case file? And
well, the new system now, you have to look someone up, and in order to migrate to the point where you can put someone in the system, it's a more drawn out process. So when in the previous platform we used to use, which was called, I believe it was called Viz, you would enter a person's name and it would be communicated to the staff person. Well, now, because there's several sectors that a person has to go through, or pages they have to go through to do that, I can see where that may extend the wait time. And it's registering a person in. It's similar to what the old system used to be, but it's not as efficient. But I think as a union member, our concern too has always been, how do we best serve the public? And as a union officer, it's always been an issue of us maintaining our relationship with the community. And so that's what AFSCME has done, as far as trying to make sure that the community is aware of the issues and want to be sure that our members do their best to service and what they were called to do.
Okay, you've mentioned before that they're understaffed.
Yeah, and that was one of the primary concerns. I think the union has always told the state and tried to advocate to the state, especially during the Round administration, which was very, very difficult and a hard time for the state, especially with no budget. But the union has always said the primary way to fix this issue of long waits and fix the issue of people receiving their notifications timely is staffing. It's pretty difficult to service 30 people. You can work on 30 cases, but if you don't have staff to replace the attrition, then that work doesn't disappear, even though that staff person might have left the job under whatever circumstances. But if you don't hire enough people, then you'll never have enough service available for the public who needs it. And when you're talking about public services, you're talking about SNAP benefits, you're talking about Medicaid, you're talking about disability insurance. And those benefits have to be processed. And if you don't have the appropriate people to do that, then yeah, you're gonna have delays.
I've had an issue with my medical card. I was not getting a medical card, and I was trying to figure out why I was not getting my medical card, but then come to find out is that they had me listed, and I did not know this, but they had me listed under county care.
Mm-hmm.
So does Medicaid fall under county care?
Medicaid is, I guess the best way I can answer that is that Medicaid is an overall program through which people are determined eligible based on federal poverty level for financial reasons. And then what I mean by that is there are certain federal poverty level standards, right? And you have to fall within that standard to be able to qualify for Medicaid. There's a certain range. And with Medicaid, there are providers who, through different programs, that issue services to the people who receive Medicaid medical coverage. So when you have county care, that is one of the many programs that is part of Medicaid. So when you receive county care, that when you go to a county health and hospital system provider, that county hospital or county clinic would then bill the services they render to the client to Medicaid, because it's covered under that insurance. So when you have county care, as a lot of people do, they utilize that, and then those vendors then bill Medicaid. And what the public Department of Human Services does is determines the eligibility and approval of Medicaid. The agency that deals with the provider of health care and the vendor and billing is Department of Health and Family Services.
Okay, because I've had Humana.
Right.
And so
And that's one of the vendors.
when I've had Humana, I've only had Humana for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've had Humana, there were certain doctors that I was not able to see.
Mm-hmm.
And there were also, I was not able to see my neurosurgeon under my Humana, and then there was other things that I was not able to get.
Was Humana the one that you were?
Humana was the one that I was with before I was switched over to county care.
Okay, was your doctor able to see you after you changed to county care?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know if my doctor takes the
County care?
county care.
Okay.
So I will not know that until I
Attempt to go.
This
is a common concern that we've had in the offices. Our members have come to me saying that they've encountered clients and customers who have come back to them with the issue of, well, the insurance that I was enrolled into by Medicaid, my doctor doesn't accept it, and or they say they're not covered. And what you just described is a similar situation. With Medicaid, the vendor you choose, like for example, when you're approved for Medicaid, that tells the department that you're eligible, and they're supposed to send you an enrollment packet, and this is the normal procedure from what I understand as when I was a caseworker, and that you get the packet and there's a list of vendors that you choose to enroll into, and you can choose, like you said, County Care or Humana. With those packages, they show what services that they will cover, and it's up to the places that you have coverage with to let you know if they accept those, accept that insurance. Oftentimes what people say is that they don't want to be switched over. So if you, from what I understand, I don't do the enrollment in the provider enrollment. That's not part of DHS. But what I've been told is that people have gotten their benefits, they don't enroll in time, and then their default put in a different program. And so when they go back to their doctor, because life happens, they've been told that, oh, well, you're in this enrollment, you're enrolled in this program, or this provider rather, not program, but enrolled with this provider. And they say, well, I want to switch back. And then they come to the public aid office and then they want to switch back, but we're not the ones to do that. The people you would have to contact would be the provider enrollment services, who registers a person who receives Medicaid. We strictly do if you're eligible for Medicaid and what program under Medicaid. We don't enroll you with the provider. And oftentimes the staff has told me that they are sometimes very frustrated because they want to help the client, because the client says, I want my doctor, but the insurance tells me that my doctor doesn't accept them, and I got to find a new doctor. And we often try, and the staff often try to help people and say, well, you need to contact the provider enrollment and say, can you switch over? And it should be a way to do that, but from what we're finding, it's very difficult and it's troublesome. But yeah, that's what happened with your case. When they switched you over from Humana, your doctor doesn't take Humana, and then when you got to County Care, you would have to find out. And what I usually advise clients, I usually tell them, I said, hey, you need to contact the enrollment provider and find out if this clinic that you've been going to and receiving treatment do they accept this provider? And I wish there was a way that we could do it at the offices, but that's not the Department of Human Services. The provider, the communication about enrollment in the provider is done by another agency. It's the Department of Health and Family Services. But I definitely have experienced that as a caseworker when I was, experienced that frustration, because nothing is as debilitating and frustrating as hearing when you go to the doctor, here's my insurance, and they say, oh, we don't accept it. We have to bill you, or you have to, we're not in that network.
When people wind up waiting for a very long time and at the Department of Human Services, mm-hmm. and they don't get seen, and then they're told that they have to come back. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that they have to? Does that mean that they would have to get an appointment to come back, or does that mean that they just come back automatically?
What happens is when you have when hours have to be shifted, and people are not being serviced by the time business close. What the staff has been trained to do, or have been told to do, is when they give someone an appointment to come back for a particular date or time, and some people come back, and some people choose to call in, but in order to alleviate a person's wait time, what our members have been told to do is, if it's 5 o'clock or 4:50 and you know that the office is closing and you cannot service that person in an appropriate fashion, you take that information and you give them a return appointment at the very minimum, and you determine what time they can make an appointment and come back the next day. And sometimes the person chooses to come in on their own. and that's fine as long as they come in with the notice of appointment and they can be seen. But in no way that the agency and that the union doesn't support turning away anybody either. And so if a person comes in, they have to at least be contacted and be serviced at some level, and be seen or be at least at the point of contact. And I think that's the really important part, especially when you have a transition of programs, because they changed over our program completely. They called it the legacy system. So the legacy system was taken away completely. So because of these errors and because of these issues and glitches, that extended the wait time. So in order to accommodate, I think the staff were told to make sure if a person comes in that they at least collect the information that they can, and that they give them a return appointment to come back the following day or when they can. I think this is especially true with people who work, where they don't have a lot of manageable time, where they say, well, I can't get off until 5 o'clock, and I don't want to spend my entire off day sitting in a public aid office. But it's very frustrating. I can understand that, where you've been sitting there all day and then you get seen and then it's the end of the day. I think if someone comes in at 4:50, you get as much information that you can from them, and if the office is closing, you don't want the person to be stuck there in the closed office with you, so you make sure that you give them the respect and the time and the courtesy of service, and make sure when they come back that they have an appointment in a set time. That's the important thing about having an appointment notice, that you have a set time, and it's also scheduled in the system.
But sometimes we don't want to wait around for the employees to get back to us.
Okay.
Then we give them can we just drop it off to where that they would be able to call us to handle our case?
Yes, some offices, from what I've seen, have had what they call a drop box, and they can request a telephone appointment or a telephone interview to have those issues addressed. In some instances, you have to do an in-person interview, like for cash assistance. You have to have that in-person interview. That is a requirement, even for people who receive disability cash. It must be in person. But from what I understand regarding the staff, they want to definitely be able to service folks and serve the public and the community, and making sure that between working with the agency and this new administration under Pritzker, that there could be a way that they can work together to address those issues, especially with this system as it currently exists. But yeah.
So now when people have to recertify for their SNAP benefits, can they just send it in, or do they have to actually physically be there to get an interview, or can they just do it over the phone?
Yeah, the customers can submit their applications online via Manage My Case, I believe it's called. They can fax them in. They can drop them off, as you were saying, as we were talking about earlier, in a drop box. And they can, of course, traditionally, most folks prefer to walk them in. The purpose is to make sure that the people are interviewed. In most cases, the only time a person can't is when they provide a telephone number that's been disconnected. It happens. And only at that time, when we can't reach that person, especially in the terms of, I believe, SNAP and medical, is that we usually send them a notice to come in specifically for SNAP. So if a person provides a workable number, and we can do the interview by phone, and if they're missing verifications, most people try to do that. I think for the procedure, we usually try to reach out at a minimum of twice via phone before we actually have to have a notice sent out to the individual's known address. But a person, from what I understand, on the Manage My Case side portal, they can go and schedule their appointment, or at least attempt to communicate they can update their cases or at least submit a change, and that's supposed to be processed too. So if a person moves, they can go online to manage my case using their password and go on and say, I changed my address. Well, from what I understand, the portal takes that information and transmits it to the office that their case is at.
A lot of times it's like offices, it's like it gets so packed into that office of where I'm at, and then it's like, okay, you don't get seen until later on, and then or I guess later in the day, and it's just like by the time you get seen, it's like, okay, it's almost closing time.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of just like, okay, I just rather drop it off in.
Yeah, well, I mean, from the worker's perspective, there are a couple of things that started this. First, there were a lot of office closures. The union has voiced their concerns about not closing and consolidating offices. If I'm not mistaken, in the past there used to be a policy where there needed to be a public aid office in every community or every county. Whereas now, over the past 9 years, offices have been closed. So when you close offices, people get consolidated into just a few that remain. So that also adds to the fact that lines are long and people are waiting because they don't have any other offices or options to go to. So in order to mitigate those issues, that's why they try to do more options, either electronically or by phone. But I think the other, like you said earlier, like we talked about, hiring and opening more offices would always reduce that. Hiring more staff and opening more public aid offices will always reduce the long waits and lines. Because even when I started over a decade ago, the lines weren't that long. Okay,
I have one more question.
Sure.
How many people do DHS offices really have working for them?
The office that the members that I represent, I would say, adjusting for attrition and people retiring and unfortunately passing away, averages 40 caseworkers, between 30 to 40 caseworkers. Back when I started, the average was maybe caseworkers in the office was maybe 50 to 70. But again, you had way more offices that were out in Cook County area. So, for example, when I started at the facility I was at, we had over 110 staff. For now, we have less than 60.
Okay. We're gonna wrap up for today.
Okay.
And it was nice talking to you, and it was nice for you to come out this way.
The same here. I'd love to be back on anytime in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.